The Galactic Concord station floated in the void like a shimmering beacon of interstellar unity, its massive silver spires reflecting the light of a nearby nebula. For decades, this space station had been the neutral ground for peace talks between the many species of the galaxy, and its name was synonymous with diplomacy. In the main hall, the crest of the Galactic Empire hung prominently next to the symbol of the Earth Alliance, a pair of icons that once symbolized hope but now simmered with tension. At the center of this uneasy balance was Ambassador Elena Drake, a woman whose reputation preceded her. Known as a fiery advocate for humanity's interests, she had earned both respect and suspicion among the galaxy's many factions. Tall and striking, with steel-gray eyes and a sharp wit, she was a force to be reckoned with. Elena's words could inspire allies and dismantle opponents with equal precision. Elena paced the briefing room aboard the Earth Alliance starship Resolute, her boots clicking against the polished metal floor. Around her, a holographic projection displayed the latest intel, a border skirmish between the Galactic Empire and an Earth Alliance colony in the Arcturus sector. It was no ordinary scuffle, it had left over 1,000 human civilians dead. The Empire claimed it was a tactical misunderstanding, but the video footage told a different story. Imperial dreadnoughts had rained plasma fire on defenseless settlements. This isn't a misunderstanding, Elena snapped, addressing the gathered officers and advisors. It's a deliberate act of aggression. The Empire wants to provoke us. General Tobias Greaves, the grizzled commander of the Resolute, crossed his arms. They are testing us, Ambassador. If we don't respond, they'll see it as weakness. If we escalate, we risk all-out war. Elena slammed her hand on the table, her expression fierce. We've tried diplomacy for years, and this is how they repay us. There are families, children, dead because of their arrogance. The peace we've worked so hard for is crumbling, and I won't let them get away with it. Greaves sighed. What do you propose, then? A formal protest? A demand for reparations? Neither, Elena said, her voice steely. I'll confront the Imperial delegation directly. They've summoned us to the Concord station for an emergency meeting. They think they can intimidate us into backing down. Let's show them they are wrong. The room fell silent. Confronting the Empire was no small matter. The Galactic Empire was a vast and ancient power, its fleets numbering in the thousands and its technologies often surpassing Earth's. But Elena's determination was unshakable, and her reputation as a fearless negotiator gave the Alliance hope. As the Resolute docked at Concord Station, the tension was palpable. The station's corridors were filled with representatives from dozens of species, their faces displaying everything from curiosity to unease. The Empire's delegation, led by Viceroy Calidra, awaited in the central chamber. Calidra was a towering, reptilian figure draped in ornate robes that shimmered with golden threads. Her scaled face betrayed no emotion, but her piercing yellow eyes locked onto Elena the moment she entered. Ambassador Drake, Calidra hissed, her voice smooth yet cold. Your punctuality is appreciated. I trust your journey was uneventful? Elena's lips curved into a thin smile. Uneventful, unlike what your fleet inflicted on Arcturus. Let's not waste time with pleasantries, Viceroy. We're here to discuss the Empire's blatant violation of the Concord Treaty. Calidra's gaze flickered to her aides, who shifted uneasily. As I've explained to your superiors, the incident was a regrettable error. Our ships encountered hostile activity and responded accordingly. Elena's eyes narrowed. Hostile activity? From unarmed colonists? Are you seriously expecting us to believe that? The chamber fell silent as representatives from other factions leaned in, eager to witness the confrontation. Calidra's composure wavered slightly, but she quickly regained her poise. The Empire does not owe explanations to those who fail to secure their own borders. Perhaps this tragedy is a lesson in vigilance. Elena stepped closer, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. And perhaps the Empire needs a lesson in accountability. If you think humanity will sit quietly while you slaughter our people, you're gravely mistaken. Calidra smirked, though it didn't reach her eyes. Bold words, Ambassador. But boldness without strength is folly. Do you truly believe your Earth Alliance can challenge the might of the Empire? Elena's pulse quickened, but she held her ground. This isn't about strength, Viceroy. It's about justice. You can bully weaker factions, but humanity won't be cowed. We've faced annihilation before and survived. We'll do it again if we must. Before Calidra could respond, a holographic display activated, showing Emperor Vorlax himself. His presence cast a long shadow over the chamber. Clad in ceremonial armor, his imposing figure radiated power and menace. The room fell silent as his deep, commanding voice echoed. Enough posturing, Vorlax declared. The Empire will not apologize for defending its interests. If the Earth Alliance wishes to escalate this matter, so be it. But let there be no misunderstanding, you are but a small star in a vast galaxy. Do not overestimate your significance. Elena felt a surge of anger but forced herself to stay composed. You underestimate us at your peril, Emperor. We may be small, but we're united. And a united people fighting for their survival is more powerful than you can imagine. Vorlax's expression darkened. We shall see, Ambassador. The Empire does not forgive defiance lightly. The hologram vanished, leaving a charged silence in its wake. Calidra inclined her head slightly, a sinister smile playing on her lips. You've made your position clear, Ambassador. I suggest you prepare your people for the consequences. As Elena returned to the Resolute, she felt the weight of the encounter pressing on her. The stakes were higher than ever. The Empire's veiled threats were not idle, they had the means to crush the Earth Alliance if provoked. But backing down was not an option. The Arcturus massacre demanded justice, and humanity's dignity was at stake. In her quarters, Elena reviewed the data again, searching for any leverage she could use. She reached out to trusted allies within the Alliance, including Admiral Kato Nakamura, who commanded the fleet station near Arcturus. Kato, Elena said during a secure transmission, we're running out of time. The Empire is pushing us into a corner. Do we have any assets we can deploy to hold them off if they retaliate? Nakamura frowned. The fleet is spread thin, but we're ready to defend the colonies. If you can buy us time, we might be able to bolster our defenses. But Elena, if this turns into open war. I know, Elena interrupted. But we don't have a choice. If we let this slide, the Empire will keep testing us. They'll see weakness and we'll never have peace. Nakamura nodded reluctantly. Then we'll stand with you. Just tell us what you need. After the call ended, Elena leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. The situation was precarious, but she refused to give up. The Empire's arrogance would be its downfall, and she would make sure of it. Outside her window, the stars glittered like shards of glass, a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and the challenges that lay ahead. For Elena, the fight wasn't just about Earth, it was about proving that even the smallest star could shine brightly against the darkness. And in her heart, she knew the battle had only just begun. The Resolute drifted silently in the void outside the Concorde station, its hull gleaming under the pale light of a distant star. Inside the ship, the tension was palpable. Elena Drake stood in the command center, surrounded by holographic displays of tactical data, intercepted Imperial communications, and star charts. Every fiber of her being was focused on the task at hand, ensuring humanity's survival against an enemy far more powerful and unyielding than any the Earth Alliance had faced before. The confrontation with Emperor Vorlax and Viceroy Calidra had escalated the situation far beyond what Elena had anticipated. The Empire's response had not been diplomatic posturing, it was a declaration of their intent to subjugate humanity. And while the galaxy's other factions watched with nervous curiosity, no one was rushing to Earth's defense. It was clear that humanity stood alone. As if to underline that reality, a sudden alert blared through the command center. A young officer snapped to attention. Ambassador, we've picked up an incoming transmission. It's from the Empire. Elena's eyes narrowed. Patch it through. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Viceroy Calidra's reptilian visage. Her expression was unreadable, her tone cold and clinical. Ambassador Drake, I trust you've had time to reflect on the consequences of defying the Empire. I have come to deliver our terms. Elena's jaw tightened, but she nodded. I'm listening. The Empire will permit the Earth Alliance to retain control of its core systems, Calidra said. However, the Arcturus sector and all adjacent colonies are to be ceded to the Empire immediately. Failure to comply will result in the full mobilization of our fleets. The room fell silent. The Arcturus sector was a lifeline for humanity, a region rich in resources and strategically vital for maintaining Earth's interstellar trade routes. Surrendering it would cripple the Alliance's ability to defend itself in the future. Elena took a deep breath, her voice steady but filled with steel. Viceroy, your terms are unacceptable. The Earth Alliance will not abandon its people or its sovereignty. If the Empire chooses war, know that we will fight. Calidra's gaze hardened. A regrettable decision, Ambassador. But if humanity insists on its own destruction, so be it. The Empire does not tolerate insolence. The transmission cut out, leaving the room in a heavy silence. Elena turned to General Greaves, her voice resolute. Prepare the fleet. They'll be coming. Hours later, the first signs of the Empire's retaliation appeared. Long-range sensors detected a fleet of Imperial warships entering the Arcturus sector, their trajectories unmistakable. The fleet was massive, dreadnoughts, cruisers, and swarms of smaller support ships. It was a show of overwhelming force designed to break humanity's will before the battle even began. Elena gathered her senior staff in the war room, a circular chamber filled with holographic projections of the battlefield. Admiral Kaito Nakamura joined via a secure link, his image flickering above the table. We can't face that fleet head-on, Greaves said grimly, pointing to the holographic display. Their dreadnoughts alone outgun our entire Arcturus defense force. Kaito nodded. We need to think asymmetrically. Guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run strikes, anything to disrupt their advance. Elena's mind raced. What about the asteroid belt near the Arcturus sector? Could we use it to our advantage? Kaito leaned forward, his holographic form studying the map. It's possible. The belt is dense, and their larger ships would struggle to navigate it. If we can lure them in, we might be able to even the odds. Greaves frowned. That's a big if. We'd need to bait them into the belt without exposing our own ships. Elena's lips curled into a determined smile. Then we give them something they can't resist, a seemingly vulnerable convoy. They'll see it as an easy target and follow. The plan began to take shape. A decoy fleet of unarmed transports, disguised as vital supply ships, would move into the asteroid belt, escorted by a small, highly maneuverable strike force. Once the Imperial fleet followed, the Earth Alliance's hidden warships would ambush them, using the asteroids for cover. It was a risky plan, but it was their best chance. Elena stood at the head of the table, addressing the assembled officers. We're fighting for our survival, for our future. The Empire thinks it can intimidate us into submission, but we'll show them the strength of humanity. This is our stand. The decoy convoy moved into position, drifting toward the asteroid belt with deliberate slowness. From a distance, they appeared defenseless, an irresistible target for the Empire's warships. Hidden among the asteroids, the Alliance strike force waited in silence, their weapons primed and their nerves taut. On board the Resolute, Elena watched the tactical display as the Imperial fleet closed in. The massive dreadnoughts loomed like leviathans, their energy signatures lighting up the sensors. Smaller frigates and fighters swarmed around them, a deadly hive of activity. They're taking the bait, Greaves reported. Their main fleet is moving into the belt. Elena nodded. Hold fire until they are fully committed. We need to maximize the element of surprise. As the Imperial fleet entered the asteroid field, the massive ships struggled to maneuver. The dense rocks and debris forced them to slow down and rely on smaller escorts to clear a path. It was exactly what the Alliance had hoped for. Now, Elena ordered. The asteroid belt erupted into chaos as Alliance warships emerged from their hiding places, unleashing a devastating barrage of plasma cannons and missile salvos. The Empire's smaller ships were the first to fall, their shields overwhelmed by the sudden onslaught. The dreadnoughts returned fire, their massive turrets lighting up the darkness, but their movements were sluggish and predictable in the confined space. Admiral Kato's fleet struck from the rear, targeting the dreadnought's engines and exposed weapon systems. The Alliance's nimble frigates darted through the asteroid field, exploiting every blind spot and weakness. On board one of the Imperial dreadnoughts, Viceroy Calidra watched the battle unfold with growing frustration. "How are they outmaneuvering us?" she demanded. "Deploy the fighters, flush them out." But the Empire's fighters were ill-suited for the asteroid belt. The same dense terrain that hindered the dreadnoughts also limited the fighters' ability to engage effectively. Alliance pilots, trained in navigating hazardous environments, took full advantage of the terrain, using the asteroids as cover and picking off the Imperial forces one by one. Despite the Alliance's initial success, the battle was far from over. The Empire's sheer firepower began to take its toll. An Alliance destroyer exploded under a concentrated barrage, its debris scattering into the void. Elena felt every loss like a physical blow, but she refused to waver. "We need to take out their flagship," Cato said, his holographic image tense. "If we can neutralize their command structure, the rest of their fleet will falter." Elena agreed. "Focus all firepower on the dreadnought leading their formation. We need to end this now." The Resolute and several other Alliance ships converged on the Imperial flagship, dodging debris and incoming fire. The dreadnought's shields flared as it absorbed hit after hit, but the Alliance's relentless assault began to wear it down. Inside the dreadnought, Calidra realized the danger too late. "Evasive maneuvers," she barked, but the ship's massive size made escape impossible. A well-placed missile strike breached the dreadnought's reactor core, triggering a chain reaction that engulfed the ship in a massive explosion. The loss of their flagship sent shockwaves through the Imperial fleet. Disorganized and demoralized, the remaining ships began to retreat, abandoning the asteroid belt and ceding the Arcturus sector to the Alliance. As the battle ended, the Resolute emerged from the asteroid belt, battered but victorious. Elena stood on the bridge, her heart heavy with the cost of the fight but proud of what they had accomplished. "They underestimated us," Greaves said, his voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "That was their mistake." Elena nodded. "And it's a mistake they won't forget." The battle had proven that humanity could stand against the Empire, even in the face of overwhelming odds. But Elena knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would not take this defeat lightly, and the true test of humanity's resilience was yet to come. The aftermath of the battle in the asteroid belt sent ripples across the galaxy. News of the Earth Alliance's victory spread rapidly, inspiring smaller factions and independent systems to take notice. For the first time in decades, the Galactic Empire appeared vulnerable, its aura of invincibility shattered by a seemingly insignificant species. But the victory came at a steep cost, and Elena Drake knew the Empire would return with a vengeance. On board the Resolute, the celebration of their hard-fought victory was muted. The damage reports were grim, several ships lost, countless soldiers dead, and resources stretched thinner than ever. The Arcturus sector had been secured for now, but the cost of sustaining this defense weighed heavily on Elena's shoulders. In the war room, General Greaves, Admiral Kato Nakamura, and other senior officers gathered around a tactical display. The holographic projection showed the latest intelligence, a massive Imperial fleet assembling near their core systems. It was far larger than anything the Earth Alliance had faced before, an armada designed to crush any resistance. "They are coming for us," Kato said grimly. "This isn't a skirmish or a retaliation. This is a full-scale invasion." Greaves nodded, his face pale but resolute. "We bought time with the last battle, but we can't hold off a fleet of that size. Not without reinforcements." Elena leaned forward, her jaw clenched. "Reinforcements we don't have," she said. "But that doesn't mean we're out of options." The room fell silent as everyone turned to her. Elena's mind raced as she studied the tactical map, searching for any advantage they could exploit. The Empire was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. They had weaknesses, arrogance, overconfidence, and a reliance on sheer brute force. If humanity was to survive, they would need to exploit those weaknesses. "What about the Eridani Nebula?" Elena asked, pointing to a glowing region on the map. "It's close to the Empire's staging ground, and the radiation levels make long-range sensors unreliable. If we can lure them in, we might be able to ambush their fleet." Cato raised an eyebrow. That's a bold plan, Ambassador. The nebula is dangerous terrain, even for us. One wrong move, and we'll lose half our fleet before the battle even begins. Elena's gaze hardened. Bold plans are all we have left. If we stay on the defensive, they'll crush us. We need to take the fight to them. Greaves studied the map, his expression thoughtful. If we position our ships along the nebula's edges, we can use the radiation to mask our movements. But we'll need a diversion to draw them in. Elena nodded. Leave that to me. The plan was as audacious as it was risky. The Earth Alliance would split its remaining fleet into two groups. The first, led by Cato, would hide within the nebula, their ships cloaked by the radiation. The second group, consisting of smaller, faster vessels, would act as bait, drawing the Empire's fleet into the trap. Elena insisted on joining the diversionary group, despite the risks. Ambassador, with all due respect, your place is here, Greaves said, his tone firm. If we lose you, we lose more than a diplomat. We lose a symbol. Elena met his gaze, her expression unwavering. That's exactly why I need to be out there. If I'm willing to risk everything, so will they. We're fighting for our survival, General. And I won't ask anyone to do what I'm not willing to do myself. Her determination silenced any further protests. The fleet mobilized, every ship carrying the weight of humanity's hopes and fears. As the Resolute prepared for battle, Elena stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. She thought of the lives lost, the colonies destroyed, and the fragile peace shattered by the Empire's greed. This was more than a fight for survival, it was a fight for justice. The first encounter with the Imperial fleet was as brutal as expected. The diversionary group, led by the Resolute, engaged the Empire's vanguard near the outskirts of the nebula. The smaller Alliance ships darted through the void, firing precision strikes at the Empire's lumbering dreadnoughts and then retreating before they could be targeted. On board the Imperial flagship, Viceroy Calidra watched the battle with a mixture of annoyance and suspicion. They are playing games, she hissed. Why are they retreating into the nebula? What are they hiding? An aide approached cautiously. The radiation is interfering with our senses, Viceroy. We can't determine their full numbers. Calidra's eyes narrowed. Order the fleet to pursue. I want them destroyed. The Imperial fleet plunged into the nebula, their massive ships carving through the swirling radiation clouds. The smaller Alliance vessels continued to harass them, drawing them deeper into the trap. The tension aboard the Resolute was palpable as the crew executed their maneuvers with precision. Status report, Elena demanded. The Imperial fleet is in pursuit, an officer replied. They're entering the ambush zone now. Elena nodded. Signal the strike force. It's time. Inside the nebula, the hidden Alliance fleet sprang into action. Cato's ships emerged from the radiation clouds, their weapons blazing. The initial barrage caught the Imperial fleet off guard, crippling several ships before they could react. The nebula's interference rendered the Empire's advanced targeting systems useless, leveling the playing field. The battle that followed was chaos incarnate. The dense radiation clouds distorted visuals and communications, forcing both sides to rely on instinct and improvisation. Alliance ships darted between the massive Imperial vessels, exploiting their sluggish movements and blind spots. The Empire's sheer numbers made the fight desperate, but the Alliance's unorthodox tactics kept them in the game. Elena's voice echoed through the Resolute's bridge as she coordinated the battle. Target their flagships. Without their command structure, they'll falter. As the battle raged, an Imperial dreadnought zeroed in on the Resolute. The massive ship unleashed a torrent of plasma fire, forcing the smaller vessel to dodge and weave. The Resolute returned fire, its railgun striking the dreadnought's shields, but the enemy ship was relentless. We can't take much more of this. Greaves shouted. We need backup. Before Elena could respond, a squadron of Alliance fighters swooped in, targeting the dreadnought's engines. The coordinated attack created an opening, and the Resolute delivered the finishing blow, reducing the massive ship to a fiery wreck. The tide of the battle began to turn. One by one, the Imperial ships were disabled or destroyed. The Alliance fleet, battered but unbroken, pressed their advantage. On board the Imperial flagship, Calidra realized the trap too late. "We've underestimated them," she growled. "Order a retreat." But the nebula's dense radiation made retreat nearly impossible. As the remaining Imperial ships attempted to flee, Alliance forces pursued them relentlessly. The Empire's armada, once an unstoppable force, was now in shambles. When the battle finally ended, the nebula was filled with the wreckage of Imperial ships. The Alliance had achieved a stunning victory, but at a heavy cost. Dozens of Alliance ships had been lost, and the survivors were exhausted and battered. On the bridge of the Resolute, Elena stood amidst the chaos, her face a mixture of relief and sorrow. "We've won," she said quietly. "But the fight isn't over." Cato's holographic image appeared, his expression grim but proud. "You did it, Elena. You led us to victory." Elena shook her head. "We all did this. Together." The Empire had been dealt a devastating blow, but Elena knew the war was far from over. The victory in the nebula was a turning point, a symbol of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. But as she gazed out at the stars, she wondered what challenges lay ahead. Humanity had proven it could stand against the Empire. Now, it had to prove it could endure. The aftermath of the Alliance's victory in the Eridani Nebula sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire had been forced to retreat, leaving a trail of wreckage and bruised pride. The defeat was more than a tactical setback, it was a blow to their reputation, a fracture in the image of their invincibility. To the smaller factions and neutral systems watching from the sidelines, the Alliance's victory was a beacon of hope, a sign that even the mightiest could be challenged. On board the Resolute, the mood was one of cautious relief. The Alliance had won, but the cost of victory was etched into the faces of every crew member. The losses were staggering, dozens of ships destroyed, thousands of lives lost, and countless others injured. The bridge, once filled with frantic energy during battle, was now eerily quiet as the crew processed what they had just endured. Elena Drake stood at the command console, her hands gripping its edges as she stared at the tactical display. The holographic map showed the aftermath of the battle, the positions of surviving Alliance ships and the scattered debris of Imperial vessels. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. "Status report," she said, her voice steady despite the weariness in her eyes. General Greaves, standing beside her, glanced at the display. "The Imperial fleet is in full retreat. They've left the nebula and are heading back to their core systems. Our forces are consolidating at the rally point, but the losses are heavy." Elena nodded, her jaw tightening. "Have we confirmed any Imperial prisoners?" "Not yet," Greaves replied. "Most of their escape pods were destroyed in the crossfire. We've recovered a few survivors, but they are low-ranking personnel. Viceroy Calidra is unaccounted for." Elena sighed. Calidra's absence was troubling. The Viceroy's cunning had been evident throughout the conflict, and Elena doubted she would simply vanish. For now, however, there were more immediate concerns. "Send word to all surviving ships," Elena said. "We need a full inventory of supplies, repairs, and personnel. Prioritize the wounded and begin salvage operations on any intact Imperial wreckage. If they left anything behind, I want it analyzed." Greaves nodded and turned to carry out her orders. As he left, Admiral Kato Nakamura's holographic image appeared on the console. His expression was grim but tempered with respect. "You did it, Ambassador," Kato said. "Against all odds, we won." Elena shook her head. "We survived, Kato. But winning is something else entirely. The Empire will regroup. They'll be back, stronger than before." "That may be true," Kato conceded, "but we've bought ourselves time. And more than that, we've shown the galaxy that the Empire isn't invincible. That matters." Elena's lips twitched into a faint smile. "It does. And maybe, just maybe, it'll inspire others to join our cause." In the days following the battle, the Resolute became a hub of activity. Diplomats, military leaders, and engineers worked around the clock to assess the situation and prepare for what came next. Messages began pouring in from across the galaxy, expressions of support from neutral factions, offers of aid from sympathetic systems, and even tentative inquiries from former Imperial allies questioning their allegiance. The victory had sparked a ripple effect, but it also painted a massive target on the Alliance. The Empire would not let this defeat go unanswered. Elena knew their next move would be decisive and brutal. Despite the weight of responsibility, she found moments of quiet reflection. One evening, as the ship drifted in the aftermath of the battle, Elena stood in her quarters, gazing out at the nebula. The swirling clouds of radiation still glowed faintly, a reminder of the chaos that had unfolded within. Her thoughts turned to the lives lost, the sacrifices made, and the people she had sworn to protect. The door chimed, breaking her reverie. "Enter," she said, turning to see General Greaves step inside. "You've been standing here for hours," Greaves said, his tone light but tinged with concern. "If you're going to lead us, you need to rest." Elena gave a wry smile. "I'll rest when we've ensured our survival. Until then, there's too much to do." Greaves studied her for a moment before nodding. "Fair enough. But don't forget, you're not alone in this. The crew believes in you, and so do I." Elena's smile softened. "Thank you, Tobias. That means more than you know." The galaxy's attention soon shifted back to the Empire. Despite their retreat, the Imperial leadership was anything but passive. In a grand address broadcast across the galaxy, Emperor Vorlax appeared from the throne room of the Imperial capital, his voice cold and unyielding. "The Earth Alliance's defiance is a stain on the order we have built," Vorlax declared. "But make no mistake, this is not the beginning of their rise. It is the prelude to their fall. The Empire does not forget. And it does not forgive." The message was clear: the Empire would stop at nothing to crush the Alliance. Elena watched the broadcast with a mix of anger and determination. The battle for humanity's survival was far from over, but she refused to let fear dictate their future. As the Alliance regrouped, Elena spearheaded efforts to form a coalition of allies. She reached out to neutral factions, independent systems, and even disillusioned members of the Empire. The battle in the nebula had given her leverage, a story of resilience and courage that resonated across the galaxy. One of the first to respond was the Arden Confederacy, a technologically advanced faction that had long remained neutral in galactic conflicts. Their envoy, a dignified being named Thalran, arrived aboard the Resolute to meet with Elena. "Your victory was impressive, Ambassador," Thalran said, his voice smooth and measured. "But the Empire's wrath will be swift and unrelenting. Why should we risk our neutrality to aid you?" Elena met his gaze with unwavering resolve. "Because neutrality won't protect you forever. The Empire's appetite for control is insatiable. If they crush the Alliance, they'll turn their sights on you next. Together, we can stand against them. Alone, we'll all fall." Thalran considered her words carefully before nodding. "You make a compelling argument. The Confederacy will provide support, for now. But know this, Ambassador, our patience is not unlimited." "It's all I ask," Elena said with a slight bow. The next weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. The Alliance worked tirelessly to repair their ships, train new recruits, and fortify their defenses. The knowledge gleaned from salvaged Imperial wreckage provided valuable insights into their technology, leveling the playing field further. Despite the grim circumstances, there were moments of hope and camaraderie. Soldiers and civilians alike shared stories of bravery and survival, forging bonds that transcended borders and factions. The Alliance was no longer just a coalition of planets, it was a united front, driven by a shared purpose. Elena found herself at the center of it all, her voice a rallying cry for a galaxy yearning for freedom. She spoke not only to the Alliance but to every corner of the galaxy, her words broadcast across countless systems. "We are more than our planets, our species, or our fleets," she declared in one such address. "We are the embodiment of resilience. We have faced the Empire's might and refused to yield. And though the road ahead is uncertain, we will march it together, united by hope and the unshakable belief that we deserve a future free from tyranny." As the Alliance prepared for the battles yet to come, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The Empire had underestimated humanity, dismissing them as insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy. But through determination, ingenuity, and sheer will, they had proven their worth. The war was far from over, but Elena knew they had already achieved something remarkable. They had lit a spark of resistance that could not be extinguished. And as long as that spark burned, there was hope. Standing on the bridge of the Resolute, Elena gazed out at the stars, her heart filled with a mixture of resolve and pride. The galaxy was vast, and the challenges ahead were immense. But for the first time, she believed they could win. "Let them come," she murmured, a faint smile playing on her lips. "We're ready."